And for those of you that are new to this being your first online event, as you know, with the COVID-19, we've had to totally transform our methods of engaging members and adding value for your membership into our cluster. And there are a lot of clusters around the world. In fact, I've got a call with the European clusters tomorrow. I'm on a panel with them talking about what we've done, because we were very quickly able to ramp up an online level of engagement. Thank you to the expertise of Ryan and Tara expediting this. We've been talking about it for a number of years now, setting up an e-platform for engaging our members for training and trying to learn how we could be running other events online. And so now it's forced our hand, and now we're doing it. And we very quickly set this up. And so Tuesday last week, we haven't sent out the update report for everybody on the result of last week, but we had over 50 people on the call last week. And it was very engaged discussion from a lot of people engaged. So we were able to glean some topics that were the most important for everybody. And so that's where it brought us here today to talk about finances and cash flow management and health and safety implications with the latest situation in the workplace. So for those of you that are still running. So I'd like to welcome everybody. A couple of things. Just one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to maintain the level of community and the sense of community that we've been able to establish with the BWA cluster. And there's a lot of, it's all about relationships. It's all about your relationships with us, but also your relationships with each other. I know a lot of you do business with each other, and many as a result of being a part of the BWA. I think and I know many people, when we ask them, what gives you value with the BWA, it's the connectivity, it's the networking, it's the connecting to other people that are in your industry, be it the other manufacturers that you can learn from, but also from your suppliers to develop those relationships. And it strengthens our industry, which is what clusters are supposed to do. So I'm glad everybody was able to join our meeting today. And what I encourage you all to do, if you can, is to use your camera if you got one, just because trying to maintain that sense of community is important. And if we can see each other's faces and talk to each other, it makes it a little more real for us in this time where many of us feel very much alone. And it's all the more important to connect. So thank you for joining us today. Just a little bit of a update. We've got about 36 manufacturing companies on the call. We've got half a dozen or more associate members on the call. And I'm not going to rhyme off everybody's name, but you're all here. And also we've got some government partners here as well from the Ministry of Natural Resources. Paul Mingue's here. And we've got Danny Deschênes from NRCan, Natural Resources Canada. These are our key partners at provincial and federal levels. We've got, also wanted to point out, we have Stephen Smith from the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade. He's our kind of go-to for government programs. So he's going to be here to answer some questions that you may have about the whole myriad of things that are happening with programs. In addition to Lucci, who's going to be presenting on the EDC, BDC stuff. And then we also have Brian Howard from BC Wood. Welcome, Brian. Nice to have you join us. For everybody to know that Blue Water Wood Alliance has partnered with BC Wood on a few projects, and they've welcomed our companies into trade shows around the globe to participate in their export projects. So they're considered a strategic partner for us as well. So there's a lot of people on the call. Stephen Kleisler's here from Kleisler Media as well. wants to know what's going on. I believe we're the only organization doing this in the wood industry, bringing people together face to face. So this early, maybe CKCA started, maybe AMAC has started, I don't know, but this is our second meeting already, and we're going to have a third one next week. We're doing them every week. These are free events for members, and we'll if we want to get into some training events, paid training events down the road, we will. It'll depend on what you want. So one of the things that I'm going to ask you to do is start to think about what your needs are. Please type them into the chat at the end of the session today. I'm going to be asking everybody to give their feedback on their needs and what we should be doing. So Ryan, have you got me? Can I share my screen now? I will.
Yeah, give it a try. Should be able to. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Okay. Yep. Great. So everybody can see that. I just got a couple of points together to talk about. So as I said, we had over 50 people last week. I think we're approaching that again today. So I'm not going to do a roll call this time. I know you can all see each other, and I would encourage anybody who has a question or wants to say something to another member, type it into a chat. There'll also be an opportunity for informal Q&A at the end of the session today. So for the very beginning, I just wanted to also point out one of the things that we're changing is when the crisis first struck, we wanted to establish some kind of social media way of connecting our members so they could have a real-time connection to each other. And so the first thing we went to was WhatsApp. At the time, it seemed like the right platform to use. Since then, we found that there are some limitations to it. And so as a result, we researched another platform called Band. So watch for the e-blast and the messaging to connect to Band. It's got more collaborative tools. You can see the history. Right now, if you just join our WhatsApp group now, you can't go back and see what's been talked about. You can access docs, you can do all kinds of stuff with it. So we're going to be sending and distributing a video on that. Brian's created one. I don't think I'm going to play it here because it's 7 minutes long. And but all you need to know is we're changing WhatsApp. So watch for the link to get registered onto Band. It's going to be 100 times better than WhatsApp. It's going to do more. So respond to the links and get registered for that when you see the links. Again, just some housekeeping. The session's recorded and it's going to be shared with members. And so there's basically no liability for what is said at our meetings. We've reached out to our lawyer for some disclaiming language. We'll be coming back with that. But nobody should be afraid to speak their mind at our meetings. And we will be recording them and posting them on our website in the secure area for members to get at them, because there's many companies that can't make the meeting today and have requested the recorded version of the event. And the last event last week was recorded and it's available on the website. So
Mike, before we move on,
yep.
Just really quick here, why don't we very quickly show them what this Band thing is. We'll give it 30 seconds. And then we'll move on, and we'll send them the link to follow so they can look into more information. We'll just give them a sneak peek real quick from the meeting right now. Okay? So just bear with me a second, and then we'll move right back on to content.
Are you going to play it, or are you just going to show them? Just
going to show them a quick screen capture, okay. Very quickly, a sneak peek, and then sure. They can follow up with the video. And the video is detailed and right to the point, and that's all it is. So if you want to just unshare your screen for a second, yeah. And then I'll just give them a quick sneak peek on what this is. Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. So I think you can see this here now. So this is going to be a very clean format. It's not going to be any advertisements on it. There's no junk that you'd normally see in a type of social media platform. Problem with LinkedIn, we found your messages don't show up in time. Problem with Facebook is it is what it is. And this is a very clean format to get your messages across, but it also helps you focus in on content you wanted. There's the video, but we'll send it out to you in a link. We found WhatsApp was a problem for being able to have a consistent conversation on something in particular. This, you can focus in your conversations. You can upload your data informations. There's a file resource area where you can be downloading content. You could search specifically here. We'll get more details on the video, but the nice thing is it's much cleaner than a previous format we had, and you can focus in on particular content that you care about. And the video does a really good job explaining why it's different. And just remember that this is not social media. This is where you guys are collaborating and sharing your information in a unique way. We're just extending the capabilities beyond what WhatsApp could ever do. Okay.
Hey, Ryan, sorry. Your screen has not been shared the whole time. We couldn't see it.
Oh,
we
really?
see you, but
Okay.
we can't see your screen.
Okay. Yeah, all it was, do you not see it now, eh?
Yes, we can now, yeah.
You can see that? Okay. This is what it was. This is the format of the page layout. These are resources where you can go immediately to. There's 0 advertisements. Super clean format. You can customize notifications so you only see what you want to see. Again, check out the video later on. I think you guys are really going to like this. And it's, again, like I mentioned, it's not social media. It's just a platform. It's exclusively to network and share information. Okay, I'll get back to you, Mike. There you go.
Great. Okay, thank you, Ryan. So watch for that, and the links will be sent out for you to join onto our band network. Okay, so we've got a nice full room, so welcome everybody. Just in the interest of time, let's move on to our topics for today. One of the topics, we had 2 main topics last week that came up, as I mentioned earlier: the financial relief for the manufacturers, a little bit more detail, and also to have someone on hand to ask questions, because we have Luci Mehe from BDC, EDC. There's been significant changes with the parameters around their programs because of the situation we're in. So he's going to talk about that and what's available. We have Stephen Smith, as I mentioned earlier, and he is here to answer any questions that we may have about the other programs. I see there's some programs, there's some questions in the chat already. So, and I know a lot of you have had some. This is one of the things you wanted us to produce. So here we have it. And then also some expertise around managing health and safety right now, and the implications and due diligence and compliance with the current situation for those of you that are still running. I know that there's been a constant debate about understanding the language of what the rules were. The rules were around the companies that are allowed to stay open and keep running, and what's considered essential and not essential. And so they updated the list last week. The bullet point on manufacturing didn't really change. There was a bit more clarification around construction. So construction sites were, for certain projects, were deemed non-essential, but other types of construction, like residential, was involved with housing, that's still deemed essential, and that impacts our commercial our mill workers and our cabinet makers. So a lot of them are still very busy. There's another dynamic that was talked about last week, that there's a lot of companies that have scaled back because they're giving employees the option to go back to come to work or not. So some of them don't have the staff to run, and they got lots of work lined up. And so a lot of companies are outsourcing for parts of their work. I would like to see and hope that you can leverage this network with the Blue Water Wood Alliance to, if you've got work you need to post out, to outsource, you can do it through the network. And also, if you need to hire some people to take up some work, you can do it through our network. We got everybody everybody's capable of helping each other out, taking on some of their volumes now. So these are some things percolating into the background. So Randy Dignard from Industrial Safety Trainers is going to talk about health and safety implications in the current environment. I encourage you to identify the questions you have. You can write them into the chat. We're going to have an opportunity at the very end to just have everybody some informal discussion. I've also got a decision tree for members in dealing with the crisis, so I'll walk through that. It's part of the PowerPoint. I had it last week, but I didn't have a chance to go through it. If I do today, I'll walk through it. It will be posted on the website. And then topics for the next event. So we've got a number that were provided to us, but we haven't decided yet which one we're going to do. So we're hoping that after today, that you'll give us some direction, and we'll deliver what the group wants, and we'll do that by next week. We have a few things lined up that we could do, but I want to get clarification from you. We'll talk about that later on. So at this point in time, what we can do then is move it over to Lucci, maybe to talk about the financial relief for manufacturers, and also if you've got questions on the other programs, Stephen is on the call as well to answer questions, to clarify questions on programs that aren't necessarily in Lucci's file of programs. So Lucci,
Okay. Let me just share my screen now. I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to be on the call here. I essentially have been having the same conversation with business owners over the course of the last 2.5 weeks, and that is around basically how companies are able to manage through the COVID volatility, and what government programs are in place to help them do that. So I have about 8 or 9 slides that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So I'll tell you a little bit about EDC. The majority of you might already know this. The most important point on this slide is, as of last week, we have been granted domestic powers. So what that means is that historically, for the last 75 years, our solutions were catered to companies that had predominantly wanted to sell outside of Canada at some point in time, or were existingly selling outside of Canada. As of last week, we can engage companies that sell only domestically. So that's a very important point, because all of the programs that I'm going to be touching on this morning are basically available for any company in Canada. So I've been having, as I said, the same conversation with business owners over the course of the last 2.5 weeks. And the number one piece of advice that I've been providing business owners is, in light of the volatility right now, the first thing you want to do is you want to protect your balance sheet. We're living in an environment right now where cash and liquidity are at a premium. Everyone wants to basically keep cash on their balance sheet. So if you have accounts receivable on your balance sheet and they're not, let's say, 100% undoubted, you might want to consider insuring those receivables. So what that means is that in the event your customer is not going to pay you for the receivable, then basically EDC will pay you. The receivable insurance covers 90% of losses that you incur on the accounts receivable, and also 90% of the work in progress that you have. So if you engage in a project right now and you get a call 2 weeks from now saying that that project is now canceled, and you have accounts receivable insurance on that specific project, then EDC would be able to reimburse you 90% of the costs that you incurred on that specific project. You can insure all of your receivables, or you can insure only one of your receivables. So the policy is completely customizable. And in my view, the pricing on the policy is not is manageable. It's essentially anywhere from 0.5% to 2% of the overall sales that you are insuring. So if you're insuring basically $100,000 worth of sales, anywhere from 0.5 to 2% to ensure that 90% of those sales are going to be paid, again, either by your client or by EDC. The next piece of advice that I've been offering is ensure that companies have as much access to capital as you need to weather this storm. Unfortunately, there is going to be companies that are going to fold over the course of the next 4 to 8 months. And the ones that are going to withstand the storm are going to be the ones that can lean on capital from financial institutions, BDC, et cetera, that are available. And I will get into some of those programs later on. For any company out there right now that has a letter of credit or a bond with their financial institution, and they basically have to put up cash collateral, or they have to carve out a portion of their line of credit to have that bond outstanding, we, EDC, can basically step in and work with your bank to ensure that your cash is released and or that your line of credit is unencumbered. So what we do there is basically we offer the bank a guarantee, and you are able to have access to your cash. I'm working on a client right now where the bank had about $850,000 of cash tied up for a lease bond. The specific landlord that this company was renting from basically wanted cash to back up that lease, and their bank had issued a lease bond, and their bank had requested cash collateral against that. And it's paying down over the course of the next 2 years. At this point in time, the outstanding balance is $850,000, and we're working on this mechanism right now where I'm offering the bank a guarantee so that this company can have access to their $850,000 back. And the last point and piece of advice that I've been offering to clients is any business that right now is transacting in US dollars. So if you are selling in US dollars and your costs are not hedged perfectly to the US dollar. So what that means is if you sell a dollar in US dollars and your costs are maybe 60 cents, then that means that 40 cents you're converting back to Canadian. And right now, everyone who is selling in US dollars and converting back to Canadian is enjoying about a 40 to 45% premium on that conversion because of the state of the Canadian dollar. What companies can do right now is they can lock in this low exchange rate so that they can basically lock in their margin of 40, 45% on each dollar they convert for the next 12 to 24 months. And in order to do that, you need to engage with your financial institution. And again, to obtain that specific product, you need to put up cash collateral, and EDC is able to step in and offer a 100% guarantee to your financial institution so that your cash is not encumbered in this specific environment. So again, to touch briefly on our accounts receivable solution, what we're doing right now in light of the COVID crisis is we are expanding our exposure limits to all companies. So what that means is if you are dealing with home hardware, you're selling into home hardware, let's say, we might be only willing to insure up to $10 million of home hardware receivables. And if 100 clients across Canada want accounts receivable insurance on home hardware, it's going to eat up that $10 million quite quickly. So what we're doing is we are increasing our exposure limits to all companies, and we're also increasing our risk appetite so that we're basically offering accounts receivable insurance on companies that before the COVID crisis we would not have otherwise offered insurance on. So again, if you have accounts receivable that you are concerned that they might not be able to pay, as long as today your accounts receivable is not overdue. So if you have shipped your product and you have offered, let's say, 60-day terms, as long as they are not overdue, you can still apply for accounts receivable insurance through EDC to cover that loss in the event that they're not going to be able to pay. We're also waiving the 60-day waiting period for claims. So what that means is that historically, if an account was due today, you had to wait 60 days before you can put in a claim. In today's environment, you can put in a claim tomorrow. And again, now we're also covering losses for goods shipped, even if the buyer has not accepted the goods. And that's subject to certain terms and conditions that we can walk through. So it's a very good solution. Our underwriters are simply being bombarded with requests, and unfortunately at this point in time, the turnaround time is around 3 weeks, but I would encourage everyone to reach out to me to get more information if you have questions about it. So in situations where you feel like you don't have enough capital from your financial institution, you don't have a big enough line of credit, let's say, what we are doing is we have deployed a COVID-19 program with the financial institutions where companies are able to access up to $6.25 million of capital, and EDC is offering an 80% guarantee to your financial institution, so that we are basically taking on the risk for 80% of that loan. And so presumably banks are basically going to be in a position to deploy more capital. This specific program, and all programs I'm going to be touching on as it relates to financing, are meant to basically help companies who, before COVID-19 came into existence, essentially, the companies were a going concern, they were viable. COVID-19 hits, and obviously everyone is affected negatively for the most part. And these programs that have been launched are meant to help companies essentially weather the storm. The BDC program, so again, this $6.25 million with an 80% guarantee to financial institutions, this is a program that is run through EDC. BDC has a very similar program. It's $6.25 million. However, BDC would fund 80% of the loan, and the financial institution would fund the other 20% of the loan. With respect to the EDC program, the financial institution is funding 100% of the loan, and they're just basically leaning on our guarantee for 80%. Again, for companies that are in a situation where they have letters of credit or bonds outstanding, and you want access to your cash or capital, I encourage you to reach out to your local EDC rep or reach out to me. I have my contact information at the end of the PowerPoint, and we can work with your financial institution to ensure that you have access to that capital. I won't spend any more time on the foreign exchange guarantee. Again, if you are selling in US dollars and you want to lock in this current exchange rate for the next 12 to 24 months as a strategy to protect the margins on the exchange rate, reach out to your local EDC representative or myself for more information on how you can do that. BDC has launched a COVID program about 2 weeks ago. The program is for up to borrowings of $2 million. It's a 3-year term loan where the first 12 months is interest-only payments. After 12 months, you're going to have to pay down 40% of the loan. And on the third year, when the loan matures, you're going to have to pay the other 60% or refinance. The pricing is 3.3%, so it's really, really aggressively priced. The maximum is $2 million, and again, 12 months interest only. So if you're in a situation where your balance sheet and your sales are impaired because of COVID-19, and you want to ensure that you have enough capital on hand to withstand this uncertainty and volatility, I would 100% encourage you to access this program, because even if you don't use the money, you can just give it back to BDC and the interest rate is only 3.3%. The Government of Canada has also launched essentially a micro loan for businesses that have payroll between $50 to $1 million in 2019. And the loan is $40,000 interest only. If you pay back the loan by December 31st, 2022, the government will forgive 25% of the loan. So if you borrowed $40,000, you only have to pay back $30,000. It's meant to cover basically expenses such as payroll, rent, insurance, utilities. And again, it's for businesses that have payroll expenses in 2019 between $50,000 and $1 million. This specific program right here for $40,000 is going to be fully administered by financial institutions. As far as I know, the CIBC is looking to launch the application program this week. And I think it's 6 questions that you have to answer online. And it's supposed to be a very streamlined approach because you're not borrowing the bank's money in this case. The bank is just administering the program. You're borrowing the government's money. And so the caveat here is, again, the banks are administering the application progress. So BDC and EDC really have nothing to do with this specific program on the front lines. We just administer the program in the back end. As far as the $6.25 million program through EDC and BDC, those programs have been launched by both BDC and EDC, but they have not been operationalized by the banks as of yet. The expectation is that the banks are going to operationalize those programs in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And again, banks are probably, there's 1 or 2 banks are going to maybe launch it next week, and then you'll have the rest in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So as of right now, the only program that you're able to access is the $2 million BDC program at 3.3%. And the EDC solutions that I had recently touched on with respect to the accounts receivable insurance, the foreign exchange guarantee, and the bonding relief support. So yeah, that's basically the sum of the presentation. Here's my contact information. I'm happy to field any questions if you have them.
Okay. Lucci, thank you very much for that timely information. I know that there will be some companies that will be interested in accessing it. Are there questions that people have about the programs that Lucci just talked about? You can unmute, folks, Ryan.
It's Will at Windmill Cabinet Shop.
I will.
Hi, Lucci. Thanks for your presentation. what is the best way for us to get started on any of these applications?
Yeah, so remember, the only one that right now you can actually apply for is that $2 million BDC loan. If you'd like, send me your contact information, and I am happy to introduce you to a BDC representative that can have a conversation with you and take your application.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there other questions about the programs that anybody has?
I have a question.
Great.
Lucci, thanks for the presentation. Rob from White Oak here. With regards to the insurance of receivables that you mentioned there, I understand how that program works. Can you touch base on how creditor insurance?
You guys go play outside. Watch out for my plant.
Sorry, how creditor insurance is working at this point in time? Let's say that
Recess
there
now.
are suppliers that have insurances. How does that work? Like, I know that cash hoarding was one of the points that you made in your slide over there.
Sorry, so can you repeat that question? Sorry.
Yeah. So regarding the insurance on the receivables, how you said you could pick and choose, let's say either having one receivable or your whole receivables list.
Mm-hmm.
How does it work with insurances on receivables right now that, let's say, a supplier has on clients? Are those insurances going to be defaulted? Are they covered under pandemics, to your knowledge?
Lucci, can you hear us?
Oh,
Lucci?
hello? Can you hear?
Oh, okay, we got
Can
you.
Okay. Again, because we're a Crown corporation and our shareholder is the government, we are looking right now to onboard risk, whereas all the other insurance agencies are looking to do the opposite, essentially. So what we're doing is we are expanding our risk appetite. So right now, there's a few different policies that you can apply for. You can apply for a cost and receivables policy where as long as your accounts receivable is not past due, you can fully insure that receivable. The way it works on the pricing is based on your sales on the receivables that you're looking to insure. So as an example, if you have 3 clients and you want to insure customer A only, you're going to have to declare how much you have sold or are going to sell in the next 12 months to customer A. And then the premium is going to be based on the credit worthiness of that customer. We're going to do basically a credit assessment on that customer, what country that customer is doing business in. So where is their head office, in the States or Canada or Europe? The terms that you're looking to insure. So are you looking to insure 90 days, 180 days, 360 days? The longer the terms, the higher the premium. And then once again, the volumes. So presumably $1 million in volumes is going to cost you more than $100,000 in volumes.
That answer your question, Rob?
Yes, it does.
Okay. We had another question typed into the chat. Randy had a question: to take advantage of the 25% forgiveness on the 40K loan, do you have to show that you're having problems or hardships paying it, or does it come automatically if you pay off the loan after the term?
Good question. I don't know exactly, but I presume that as long as it's been paid by 2022, December 31st, you're not going to have to essentially, like, they're going to forgive 25%. So I don't have the exact answer to that question because the program hasn't been launched yet. So I don't know how that part's going to be administered, but the government is ensuring that you only have to pay back 75% as long as you meet that deadline. And as far as I'm hearing, that specific $40,000 program, all the banks are going to deploy streamlined applications where the purpose of that program is to get $40,000 into the hands of businesses as quickly as possible. So I don't think that you're going to have to fill out a 3-4 page application. Again, I'm hearing that CIBC, you're gonna answer 6 questions, and you may not have to provide documentation. I don't know that, but it's supposed to be a streamlined program.
Okay, thank you. There's a question, when will it be launched? Do you know when it will be launched, Lucci?
Yeah, so I read on the Globe and Mail, CIBC is looking to launch it this week. The other banks, then I'm going to say the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
The problem that's going on right now with financial institutions and EDC, BDC is that everyone's being inundated with requests. So the banks are being inundated with service requests around payment deferrals. And so they're having a hard time turning around things relating to accessing additional capital. BDC is being inundated with both payment deferrals and this new program. We're being inundated with accounts receivable requests. So as time progresses, turnaround time is going to be a problem everyone's going to have to contend with. And that's why, at the very least, on the accounts receivable side, what I would encourage everyone to do is, if you have an interest in it, you can follow up with me. I can send you a link to the application, and you basically fill in an application to obtain a quote. And at the point of time, you're going to get an email with a quote, and then you're going to basically decide whether you want to move forward with accepting the quote and making the payments or not. Payments are being deferred by 6 months across the board and across all EDC products. So if you decide to accept an accounts receivable policy and it's going to cost you, so I'll give you an example. There was a client that insured about $300,000 of sales to Mexico and Guatemala. He's paying around $6,500 for that policy. That's the cost of that specific policy. And again, he's insuring about $300,000. He won't have to pay that for 6 months.
Okay. There's one more question. There's one more question, Lucci. If payroll is over $1 million, is the payroll loan not available?
That seems to be the case.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Lucci, for your presentation, and folks, for your questions. I know that if you've got more questions, you can post them, but we're going to have to move on with the next presentation, and we're going to have some more Q&A after. Lucci, again, thank you very much for your time and participating. And so please don't hang up, stay on the call, and I'm sure there could be more questions coming your way. Now, I just want to turn to Stephen Smith just for a moment. Stephen, there was one question Drew had regarding the 75% wage subsidy. Was that if we're going to apply for the 75% wage subsidy, how much can the employees work? We may be working about half time just to keep up with essential jobs. If we have to close completely, that makes no sense, as they would require 30% drop in revenue. It would obviously be 100% drop if they closed. That was his question in the chat.
Right, and thank you so much for the question. I'm going to have to preface this a little bit. My role for the last week and a half has been procurement for the government. So I don't know the answer to that question. I could take that away and get that answer for you, though.
Okay.
I don't know your contact information. Maybe, Mike, you can facilitate that for us?
For sure, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Sorry, I can't answer that for you. On this call, really, if anybody has any questions about procurement for the government or financing for procurement, we could let those questions go, or I could give a brief introduction as to what we're doing and how a company could apply for procurement. And when I say procurement, I mean companies willing to or able to kind of pivot into protection equipment to sell to the government.
Right. Andrew, are you your name was popping up, right? Do you have a question, Andrew?
No?
Oh, okay. How you doing? Nice to see you anyway. Okay, does anybody have any questions about the programs? If one of the things that has come up in the last week is companies retooling. So maybe Stephen, maybe at a high level, could you talk a bit about what you've been doing then with procurement?
Yeah, sure. So step one is to register with Ontario Together. It's a website out there that lets the government know what you can do, when you can do it, how you can do it, and then that puts you in a pipeline where they're going to prioritize and have us reach out to you. And typically now from that website, it will come down to me or whoever your territory manager is, and then I reach out to you to discuss how we can move this forward.
Okay.
We're flooded with applications, which is a wonderful thing that companies are pivoting to do this. But that also means we need to prioritize. So we're looking, I want everybody to do it if they're pivoting because it's a good opportunity. But we're prioritizing now companies that are licensed or close to being licensed or can move quicker than others that are 5-6 months down the road. We're still interested in those companies that can move a little slower than the other ones or are going to take a bigger investment to get there. But you know, we're working quickly on the ones that can work quickly with us.
So that's the Ontario Together website. I think, Tara, was that included in the websites that we sent out to everybody? I'm not sure if it was. I'll double check, but we'll make sure that we send that link out to everybody. I believe it was.
Okay.
Do you recall seeing that, Ryan?
I'll have to check back. There's been a lot of links going out.
Yeah, there's been a lot of link. Yeah, so we'll make sure that we have the Ontario Together link on our next e-blast. Thank you very much, Steve. So please don't hang up. Some folks may have some more questions for you after.